It would seem as though.
Oh my goodness gracious, great balls of fire. It would seem as though I'm alone here today because Annika is on a well-deserved vacation in Los Angeles. She is taking a little break, taking a few days off. And so today's It Would Seem As Though podcast, the podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and nothing. Today's going to be really a lot of nothing, is just me. And so we'll see how that all works out. Who knows, at the end of the day, I may scrap the whole thing. But we'll see. If you hear this, obviously I didn't scrap it, right? So I do have a couple of little things I would like to talk about. Last week, I mentioned that I may be doing a one-woman show. And between then and now, it was announced, put out on Facebook, and sold out. I couldn't be more happy and surprised and thrilled because, frankly, I didn't think that it would sell out. I didn't think that it would even sell. But that's me and my self-doubt. And I think it's just years of doing things, doing shows and whatever, and not getting the response that I expect or not getting the audience I expect, but whatever. Clearly, now that I'm old, people consider me iconic or legendary because those are just terms in our community that just mean old. Let's face it. If you've been around that long and you have lived through all the things, then you get the status of legendary. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But speaking of legendary, it is a bad year for legendary queens. We talk about this every week, and for the past several weeks, that we just keep losing these legendary queens. One of the probably most well-known drag queens is Dame Edna Everage. Now, Dame Edna is Australian, I want to say. I didn't do a single bit of research into this, and she was on like every single talk show there was to be on. Had her face out there for many, many years. She also, in her later days, was a little problematic, said some problematic things about trans folks. But that aside, she also brought drag into everybody's home. And so all these people who are getting all their feelings hurt and are freaking out about drag queens, think about the fact that you've seen drag queens really your whole life on television, and it didn't make you want to put on a dress. And if it did, you probably are, and you're not one of the people that's trying to vote in these laws. And as of yesterday, there are 464 bills that are trying to be put into law that are all anti-drag, anti-queer, anti-trans. So it seems to me we have bigger fish to fry. It seems to me that it's one of those look over there kind of strategies. Look away from the real problem. Look away from the fact that the world is on fire, that children are being killed in their schools, that gun violence is out of control. Yeah, don't look at that. Look at drag queens reading in libraries or putting on shows for brunch. Stupid. It's just stupid. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. That's a different story altogether. But it is what it is. So this is probably going to sound very silly, but I was trying to figure out what I would do on a podcast all alone. And I thought, you know what? We had so much fun answering all the questions of the 2 different times we just answered random questions from the internet that I thought I would do the same, just except by myself. Now, I downloaded this thing that was called, it's like 275 questions to get to know someone better. I will not be doing 275 questions today. I will answer a bunch. I've only looked at the first 4, I believe. And so that will all be a surprise. So I will answer them in an unrehearsed kind of a way. So we'll see what comes up of that. And if you hear me pausing too long, it's just because I'm thinking, and I'm old, and thinking sometimes takes time. Because, so I'm going to share with you something stupid. And don't ask why. I don't know why. For many years, I have confused Christian Slater with Val Kilmer. Why? They look nothing alike. They are just actors of the same generation, same genre, who did a lot of similar kind of movies. I can tell them apart, for heaven's sakes. However, for some reason, when I think of one, I can't remember which one did which thing. Well, this morning, I was laying in bed and Christian Slater popped into my head. Why? I don't know. And then I was like, oh, who is it that I always get him confused with? And Val Kilmer left my head entirely. And I laid there for about 5 minutes going, whoa, what is his name? And nothing would come to me. And if you're of a certain age, you know this happens. And it's unexplainable. It's just part of life. And I personally think it's because our brains get too full. And so it starts booting out the unimportant information. And certainly in my life, Val Kilmer is unimportant. Nothing against you, Val. I know you're listening to my show because we're old friends. But literally like 10 minutes later, it just popped back into my head out of nowhere. And I think it's that old, when you stop thinking about it. It was just a funny way to start my day. The first question is, what's your favorite way to spend a day off? Honestly, when I was younger, it used to be shopping. I used to love to go shopping or go to the movies. As I've gotten older, shopping just means that I'm spending my money, and I'm probably not going to have money for something that I really need, and I don't need to just randomly buy crap. I also don't have that empty space in me that I think I can fill with crap from the store. So I do a lot less of that. I do a lot more just kind of trying to relax, watch TV, and do little things around my house. I am not a fantastic housekeeper. I am a mediocre at best housekeeper. So I will watch a little TV, then clean a thing. And I will usually set like, okay, today I'm going to clean the bathroom. And if that's my thing for that day, that is literally probably the only thing I will clean. Now, I do other things. I fix my husband breakfast and coffee and all the things to get him off for his day and pack his lunch. I make less and less I make the kids breakfast. I'm trying to get them a little more independent. But then I take them to school. So a lot of the time now is just kind of managing the household and managing my children. So, because they're 12 and 14. So really at this point, they should be a little more self-managing. But unfortunately, being the mom that I am, the overprotective, I want to do everything for my children mom, I have probably kept them from learning some things that they should know by now. But I like to watch Netflix. I like to watch documentaries. I'm watching one right now. I mean, not right this second, obviously, because I'm talking to you. I'm watching a documentary right now that is called How to Change Your Mind, and it's about how psychotropic drugs can actually reset your brain. So it's really quite fascinating. Question number 2, what type of music are you into? I used to think I was very eclectic and that I liked a little bit of everything. Turns out, once I compared myself to my husband, I'm not eclectic at all. I like a lot of different kinds of music. I like classic country. But like Patsy Cline, Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, that kind of stuff. And a little bit of the new country, where it's these new girls like Maren Morris and Kelsey Ballerini and, a few of the younger kids who actually are cool and open-minded and whatever. But mostly, I'm into R&B, old Motown disco. But my favorite of favorites of them all is Patti LaBelle, because she is definitely I think the greatest voice ever in music, and you can fight me about that. I don't care. Number 3, what is the best vacation you ever took and why? So, funny enough, I haven't gone a lot of places. I've gone to Disneyland a lot because it's my favorite. I've gone to Disney World, and that was fun. I like Disneyland better than Disney World. And I've done a little bit of traveling. I went to the East Coast, went to East Hampton, Massachusetts with my husband to visit some friends. And that was lovely. Got to go into New York City and see a play, and that was really nice. I was very excited about that. That was one of my big dreams, was to see a play on Broadway. And I got to see The Color Purple on Broadway. And it was spectacular. But I have to say, probably my favorite is going to Disneyland with my family. Because I'm in the happiest place on earth with the people I love the most. So what really could be better than that? Number 4, where's the next place on your travel bucket list and why? Honestly, I don't know. At some point in my life, I would like to go to Ireland. I have the clearest ancestry path I have is Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and I would love to see all of that. But travel, of course, is super expensive, and so I don't know. But I think that I would love to go see parts of Europe, and I don't. Beyond that, I'm not real specific, but I know my sister just got back from Ireland, she and her wife, and I saw lots and lots of beautiful pictures. So it does make me want to travel there. I feel like this podcast is going to be a little noisier than normal because I did not put the dogs away. I did not shut off the cuckoo clock. I was like, going to be a little more casual today. And of course, my dogs are idiots and they bark at everything. So that might be a problem. But you'll probably hear them from time to time in the background. If they get too noisy, I will shut it off. What are your hobbies and how did you get into them? It's this kind of question that makes me feel like a very boring human being. My hobbies are, I love movies. I love trivia games. But I don't have any, I don't create really anything. I, for a while, was making quilts, and I only made a couple, and then I kind of put that by the wayside because I didn't have the space to do it. Not with any kind of, and to do it well. I was kind of doing it like I do most things, which is kind of by the seat of my pants and half-assed. But I guess performing would be a hobby for me because it never was enough to make a living. And I don't really do it very much anymore because, well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm old. Number 6, what was your favorite age growing up? I don't know. I would have to say growing up, because I grew up in poverty and I grew up in a horrible little place where I was bullied all the time. Childhood was not fantastic for me. So probably my favorite time was when I was old enough to get away from there. When I was old enough to be out on my own. When I was old enough to make my own choices and mistakes. So 18, 19, and really, I feel like I did the bulk of my growing up in my 20s when I got out into the real world and got real world experience and met people and started creating my own chosen family. I'm going to say very blessed because my chosen family includes a lot of my blood family. But when I learned that it didn't have to include all of my blood family, what an amazing day that was. Number 7, what was the last thing you read? The last thing I read was a lovely little book by my friend called Consecrated Ground. Now, it's Consecrated Ground is by Virginia Black, that is her nom de plume. Her real name is Maria Webster, but it's an amazing book. I'm trying to remember what she classified as action, sci-fi, because it's fantasy, it's witches and all kinds of magical creatures, but it's really, really good. And I highly recommend it. Number 8, would you say you're more of an extrovert or an introvert? I believe that I am what RuPaul refers to as an extroverted introvert. I love being on stage. I love being the center of attention. But I don't want to be the center of attention all the time. And I also don't feel comfortable in crowds. I'm not the person who's going to go to a party and walk around and meet everyone and, schmooze. I can't even talk today. And schmooze with everyone. That's not my thing. If I go to a party, which is usually against my will, not really, but it's like, I'll go because I said I would go. I'm also the person, by the way, who will say yes to a plan and immediately regret it and be like, oh, I should have said no. I want to stay home. But if I go to a party, I'm the person who finds a place to land. And then if people want to talk to me, if they see me and come talk, great. But I don't want to mingle. And it's just because it makes me uncomfortable. And I figured out years ago that it makes me uncomfortable because growing up as the unpopular kid, to then insert yourself into a place where you don't know if you're wanted can have, unexpected results. So, no thank you. So I don't really know how to answer that question. What was the last TV show you binge watched? Well, at the suggestion of my coworker, the last thing I binge watched was the show Unstable on Netflix with Rob Lowe and his son. And it was interesting. It was cute. It was meh. Now, right before that, I binge watched the show God's Favorite Idiot with Melissa McCarthy and her husband. And I'm sorry, I do not ever remember his name. And I loved it. It was one of those just feel-good, funny, silly programs that each episode was a half an hour. So it went by very quickly, and there's 8 episodes and hopefully a second season. But that I really enjoyed. Also, the show Loot on Apple TV. With Maya Rudolph, who I adore. Maya Rudolph, I would probably watch in anything because she's fantastic. But I really also very much enjoyed that. But it was certainly not the last thing I binged watched. Number 11, are you into podcasts or do you only listen to music? Podcasts are stupid. Nobody should ever listen. I'm just kidding, obviously. In my car, I usually listen now to podcasts. If my children are in the car, we listen to music. And it varies whether we listen to the radio or we listen to my iPod. Because yes, I'm that old. I still have an iPod. But anymore, I listen to the radio with my children. I listen to podcasts when it's just me. It makes me, I don't know, I feel like I'm hopefully learning something, but I'm also staying connected with people who are at least a couple generations younger than me of what's going on in queer culture, because all of the podcasts I listen to are in queer culture. None of them, I don't listen to any of the heterosexual podcasts. I know that sounds silly, but whatever. Number 12, do you have a favorite holiday? Why or why not? When I was younger, Christmas was my favorite. And I would say it probably still is. It's just changed. As I've gotten older, it's not at all about me. I liked it, of course, when it felt like it was about me. But as an adult, it, of course, felt less and less about me. And then I had children, and it became not at all about me. It's about them. And that actually, for me, kind of brought some of the magic back to Christmas. Having children, seeing the surprise and the delight on their face Christmas morning, that's what it's about for me. And I love that. And I imagine, that magic's not going to last much longer because, as I mentioned, my children are 12 and 14. Now, somehow, my children both at least claim to still believe in Santa Claus. And I hope that's true. And if not, they're very good actors and they're making me believe that. I believed until I was like 10. And the only reason I stopped believing then is my sister decided to tell me the horrible truth and took great delight in telling me the truth, which I thought was mean and whatever. But that was kind of her MO. So Number 13. Oh, God. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? I know we answered this before on when we did the questions the last time. And Annika helped me rethink the one food as in like a dish as opposed to an ingredient like cheese or bread or whatever. I think if I could only eat one food and it didn't have negative effects on my health, it would probably be nachos. Because I love the chips, I love the salt, I love the cheese, I love all the good things. I love the little spice from the peppers and whatever. It's just an all-around delicious, but not terribly healthy meal. I mean, we got a lot of protein with your beans and whatnot. And why I'm trying to make this sound like a good choice, I do not know. Because, of course, it's not. But I have certainly eaten nachos in a lot of different places. And sometimes they're amazing and sometimes they're not. But even the worst nachos I've had have not been terrible. Because, they're chips. How wrong can you go with them? Do you like going to the movies or prefer watching at home? It depends. If I am going to watch something that I know I don't want any interruptions, I would much rather watch it at the theater. Because then nobody's talking to me. Nobody's walking in and out of the room. Nobody's doing anything to distract me from the movie. But if it's a movie that I'm not as invested in, I would rather watch it at home. Because then I can also pause it and get up and go to the bathroom and do whatever. And if it's not terribly interesting, I can kind of check out. Whereas if I'm in the theater, that's much harder when you're alone or you're sitting in a dark theater and that's all there is there. And you can't turn on your phone in the theater. You can't do something else. I suppose at some point I could just leave, but usually I go to the movie with someone else. So probably not. Probably not going to be doing other things. So it really is dependent on the movie. What is your go-to guilty pleasure? I don't really have any guilty pleasures. I don't have anything that I feel guilty about. Guilt's a wasted emotion. Why bother with that? All right, next question. How old were you when you had your first celebrity crush and who was it? I don't know how old I was. I was young. I was probably 12, maybe. I was pretty young, 12, 13 possibly. Around there. And my first celebrity crush was on Cat Stevens. Now, if you look him up and see pictures of him from when he was a very young man, you'll see he was a very, very handsome man. I mean, now he's just an old man with gray hair and whatever. But in my youth, I thought he was absolutely beautiful. And it's one of those weird things because most teenagers, their first celebrity crushes are on people who are much more androgynous, much less fully formed grown person kind of. And he obviously at that point was a grown man. But I don't know. I saw him and just thought he was beautiful. And I loved his music. So that's who that was. What's one thing that can instantly make your day better? Golly gee, I don't know. I would say if my morning goes well, if my children are in good moods, if my son isn't being a drama queen, then my day is automatically better. Because there are mornings where he will start out the day in a mood, which then puts me in a mood, or it's not his fault, I allow it to put me into a mood. But on the days where it's just a smooth morning and everybody gets ready and everybody's in a good mood and everybody does what they need to do, I start out with a much better day. Number 18, do you have any pet peeves? I probably do. And they're probably all stupid. I mean, there are things that just drive me crazy. Like when people shuffle their feet, just the sound of it bothers me. I don't know. And I can't say I don't know why. I do know why. Growing up, my mother all the time would be like, pick up your feet, stop shuffling your feet. And so somehow that transferred to me. When people use the wrong words and I know I've learned that's kind of an elitist thing, but it just drives me crazy. And it's like when you say, yeah, that's not what that word means. Well, I meant to use it that way. Did you? Or, whatever. And thankfully, as I've gotten older, I also don't correct people most of the time. Every once in a while, I still do. I mean, it's my children, I do, because I want them to learn. Which meal is your favorite, breakfast, lunch, or dinner? I'm going to say dinner. Dinner is usually the heartiest meal for us. It's also when we sit down as a family. Now our traditions have changed a little. And so about half of the week it's at the dinner table and the other half we're watching whatever TV show we're binging. And right now it's X-Files. The last one was Bones. And right now we're watching X-Files as a family. And so we will get our dinner and watch X-Files or, again, whatever it is. We're also watching the show Ghosts, which is super cute and funny. And that's what we watched, I think, last night and the night before, because we're very behind on it. Number 20, oh my God. What song gets you out on the dance floor? None of them. None of them. I'm old, I'm fat, I don't really dance anymore, which is a shame because I used to love to dance. When I was young, the song that would do it every time was a song that's probably none of you will know. It's called Do You Wanna Funk by Sylvester. And it's just an amazing beat. And as you can hear, there's my cuckoo clock, so whatever. It's an amazing beat, it's fun, and I loved it. And when I first started going out dancing, I was underage, and I would go to this underage club, and the big hot song at the moment was Celebrate by Kool and the Gang. And when it came on, the dance floor would fill up. And granted, the dance floor wasn't terribly large, but that was a fun one. What activity instantly calms you? Sleeping. I mean, I don't know what activity calms me. I'm pretty calm. I'm a pretty zen person most of the time. Unless you piss me off and then my zen is gone. But, yeah, probably listening to music. Ideally, how would you spend your birthday? That's an easy one. I would spend my birthday ideally being waited on. I want to spend my birthday like going to a movie, going out to dinner, and having to do absolutely nothing. I don't want to pick up a dish. I don't want to do anything. I want to be treated like the queen that I am for one day. I don't want to have to even put out my kids' pills. I want someone else to do all of the things. And I know it's silly, but I just, on one day out of the year, I don't want to have a single responsibility. What do you do on your commute to and from work? Oh, that's an easy one. My commute's about 20 minutes, both ways. So I have 20 minutes to get there. And on those 20 minutes, I listen to a podcast. And yes, sometimes this is the podcast I listen to. I always want to listen to it just to make sure that it's good and see if there's anything for the next week that we need to not do, or see that, whatever. I want to listen to it and make sure we don't sound like idiots, which so far, knock wood, I don't think that we have. We've had some that are kind of rambly. We've had some that were not as good as others. But as a rule, I think they're pretty good, and I enjoy them, and I still laugh at the ridiculous nonsense that we say. Question 24, what's your favorite season and why? Well, back when we had seasons, because I feel with climate change, our seasons all kind of blend together. I mean, yes, winter obviously is colder and blah, blah, blah. In summer we get blisteringly hot, but we don't have clear-cut seasons anymore like we used to. But spring used to be my favorite season because it would get nicer, it would be drier, it would still have some rain, but it also wouldn't be hot yet. And things are blooming, and I love that. And since I don't have allergies, I don't mind that things are blooming. I don't mind that there are flowers everywhere. What's the phone app you use the most? I'm going to probably say YouTube. I like watching videos. I like watching YouTube shorts. But I also do a couple different puzzles. But YouTube is probably the one I use the most. My favorite app, though, it's not the one I use the most, but my favorite app is IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, because I love looking up things about movies and learning things about actors and actresses just because I do. That's always kind of been my thing. Would you rather cook or order in? That is not even a contest. If I had unlimited financial resources, I would always order in. Cooking's fine. I'm not a creative cook. I know how to cook. I take care of my family. They're fed. But it's never anything like spectacular. Every once in a while, I'll go out on a limb and cook something new and different. But, given the choice, I would rather somebody bring me food, for heaven's sakes. What's your favorite board game? I can tell you what my least favorite is Monopoly. Because it monopolizes way too much of my time. I feel like 17 hours later, we're sitting here, no one's won the game yet. Ugh, boring. Trivial Pursuit. I would probably say Trivial Pursuit is my favorite board game. Because I enjoy it. I enjoy trivia, as I mentioned earlier. I especially enjoy entertainment trivia, which is what my kind of forte is, or at least used to be. I'm not up on all the latest stuff, but I do love playing Trivial Pursuit. Now, in our household, when we play Trivial Pursuit, everybody else has to go get all their pies one time, but to win, I have to get all of them twice. Because my husband says that's fair. 28. How do you take your coffee? I don't particularly like coffee. And so I drink a coffee beverage that it really is a lot of cream with a little coffee flavoring. I drink a venti decaf iced Americano with extra heavy cream and 4 packets of stevia. So really what I'm getting is, I think, like a shot of decaf espresso, which sounds ridiculous, but I can't have caffeine. And ice and cream and I think water. I don't work at Starbucks, so I don't know. What's your most prized possession and why? That's a question. Possessions, and this is going to sound all woo-woo and nonsense and whatever, but possessions are possessions. And I have a lot of things, and I would be sad if some of them got taken away, but I wouldn't be distraught. I wouldn't be ruined. I wouldn't be, whatever. Probably a couple of the things that I wanted forever, and my husband bought them for me. Like, I always wanted a grandfather clock, and one year he got me the grandfather clock that we could afford, which is not a real grandfather clock, but it's a grandfather clock-ish. It chimes. But that meant a lot to me because that meant he was listening. Also, he got me a cuckoo clock, as you heard. I have a thing for clocks. I don't know why. I like clocks. I like the ticking sound. I just enjoy clocks. I always have. So that's probably would fit up there. But again, if they all went away tomorrow, I'd be sad, but I would replace them. And I wouldn't, have to go take to my bed about it or my fainting couch. No, I don't have a fainting couch. Number 30. Okay. I know we did this one before. Actually, I'm going to skip that one because we did this. What would you the first thing you do if you won the lottery? I would make all my friends have money too. Because if I won a big lottery, I'd pay off my house, set up my children with college funds, pay off all my bills, and then make sure everybody I knew had money too. How do you enjoy spending your alone time? Alone. I barely ever get alone time. As those of you who've listened to our pod very much, you know that my mother lives with me and has for 12 years. And in the last 3 years, 3 years ago, I think she was diagnosed with dementia. And it's getting worse. And so she wanders. She has her own apartment downstairs. And she's welcome to come up and hang out with us upstairs, watch movies, have meals with us, whatever. But she often wants to be alone. And the the more her dementia progresses, the more she will like wander through 16 times because she has to go check on her one little chicken that lives outside. And she will have just checked on it, but she'll go downstairs, she'll fall asleep, and then she'll wake up and think, oh God, I have to go take care of my chores and come back. So it's kind of an all-day thing. And so, I mean, it is what it is. And that's why I'm very, very glad that I can be here. But alone time, I don't get much of that. What's the best concert you've ever been to? Oh, that's tough. I've been to some really great concerts, and I've been to some really not great concerts. The Pointer Sisters was pretty spectacular. I have to think about that because there were so many that were really, really good. I've seen Cher 3 times and Patti LaBelle 3 times, and all 3 times I'm going to say Cher, because Cher's concert is not just Cher standing on stage singing. It's Cirque du Soleil featuring Cher. There are, and Pink. Oh, because there's so much stuff happening. I'm going to stick with Cher because it's multi. What is the word I'm looking for? There's several. I mean, because there's video and there's music and there's singing and dancing and costume changes and all the things that make it more like kind of a Vegas show than just a concert, which is much more up my alley. And her shows are spectacular. Do you have a favorite type of exercise? Oh my God. No. Running my mouth. That is it. That is my favorite type of exercise. I exercise my right to not get up and do hiking and things. I don't know. What causes are you passionate about? That one's easy. The causes I am passionate about, we talk about on here all the time, is equal rights for everyone. Is everyone having the exact same rights? Nobody having to fight for their rights, and nobody thinking that their rights should be voted on. Why should one person get to vote if someone else has the same rights that they do? What gives you the right to say that someone else shouldn't have the same rights as you? I want everyone in the queer community to have all the same rights as everyone in the black community, as everyone in the whatever community. I want everyone to feel that they are safe and that they are all living in the same equal world. And I know that is a huge fantasy, but it is one that should happen, and it is one that could happen if people would just figure out that we're all just people and we all deserve the same stuff. So there's that. What is your favorite content genre? Horror, sci-fi, rom-com, etc. I don't know. I would have to say probably for me, my favorite content, if it's movies, I really like what I refer, and I don't think this is a genre. I really like what I refer to as kind of just a little slice of life movie where it's like there isn't some big plot, there's no action, there's no adventure, it's just life. A couple of my favorite movies are, one of my favorites is Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, and the entire movie takes place within a Five and Dime store with this group of friends in 1955 and then at a 20-year reunion in 1975. And it's all conversation. And I imagine most people would find it as boring as hell. And I love it. I've seen it more times than I can even tell you. I love also the movie Postcards from the Edge, Meryl Streep, Shirley MacLaine, and it's based on Carrie Fisher's life with her mother, Debbie Reynolds. No action, no adventure, a lot of funny. I think it's very, very funny. It's very witty and sarcastic, and I love it, as was Carrie Fisher. But yeah, I don't need bombs going off. I don't need spaceships. I don't need vampires. I just want to see life reflected on the screen. But, not a boring life, just life. What's an essential part of your daily routine? I would say normal. The most important thing probably is taking care of myself, the stuff you have to do every day, brush your teeth, you know, shower, put on deodorant, moisturizer, all those things. Probably, I think the reason I don't look my age is because when I was a teenager, my mother taught me about moisturizer and how to lotion every single day, twice a day, to make sure your skin doesn't look like shoe leather, and also to avoid the sun as much as possible. Or if you're going to be in the sun, to use a lot of SPF, because I don't want to look like I'm 100 years old. What's the worst gift you've ever received, and what did you do about it? Oh, God. The worst gifts I ever received, and I say plural gifts, were all from my mother-in-law when I was married to my first husband. All right, I'm just going to tell you this story just because it cracks me up. And I've probably told this story on here before. But the very first Christmas I spent with his family, I had never met them. I went to their house and spent Christmas with all these strangers. But I, of course, because I was raised right, I brought gifts for his family. And we sat down to open Christmas presents, and he sits down to a mountain of gifts taller than he was sitting down, not standing up. And I literally got this the teeniest gift bag I've ever seen in my entire life. And it had in it 2 pieces of taffy, and by the way, I fucking hate taffy, and a single serving of coffee. And as I mentioned earlier, don't drink coffee. But it was literally for like a cup of coffee. So the entire gift might have cost 50 cents, perhaps. And it isn't about the cost, really. But the fact that he sat down to a pile of hundreds of dollars worth of gifts, and I got, 2 pieces of taffy and a cup of coffee. And then the next year, his mother gave me one of those weird hooks that you put on the top of your door frame to hang stuff on. Like you can hang hangers on it, but you just hooks over the top of the door. Now I didn't want that. My husband had asked for that. And so she wrapped that up and gave it to me as a gift because got to give me something. And a coffee table book about Elvis. Why? Elvis is fine. I like Elvis. I don't want a coffee table book. So it's the year I always refer to as getting a book and a hook. And did I do anything about it? No. I mean, I made jokes about it forever, which always pissed my husband off. But my first husband, not my current husband. His family never bought me anything. But that would probably be the worst. While I was paused, waiting for my mother to do her thing, I skipped ahead a bunch of questions because a lot of them are questions we've already asked and done on this show. How would your 10-year-old self react to what you do now? Well, when I was little, I always knew that I wanted to do hair, and then I wanted to perform. And then because when you ask me what do you want to be when you grow up, I would always say I wanted to be a wife and mother, a hairdresser, and I want to be famous. And though I certainly didn't achieve fame on a, grand scale, I achieved it on a community level, which was fine and wonderful, and about as much as my ambition would take me, because I don't have a hell of a lot of ambition. But my 10-year-old self would be like, yeah, that's what I figured you'd be doing. You'd be doing hair. Now, did I think I'd own my own salon? No. I didn't think that far ahead. And I don't think I thought that was possible until it happened. Because when I was needing to look for a job because the salon that I was working at was closing, I only looked at a salon that was for sale just for the hell of it, because I hate looking for work. And at that point, I was 43, I want to say. That sounds right. I was 43, 44, right around there. And, excuse me, a lot of places, especially salons, don't want to hire you if you're older, because they want young and cute and trendy and whatever. But I just decided one day, I was like, just for fun, I'm going to look and see. And so I looked, and most of the places I found were ridiculous and outrageously priced. And then I found the salon that I ended up buying And I thought, oh God, I could probably actually afford that. And then didn't think much about it. And then a week or so later, I looked again and it was still there. And I talked to my husband and I said, hey, I have this super crazy idea. And he said, well, do it. And so, 17 years ago, if I'm doing the math right, 16 years ago, 2006. So I guess that would be, yeah, in June it would be 17 years. 17 years ago, I bought a salon and have been there ever since. And knew nothing about running a business and probably still don't. I probably do it all wrong, but I've managed to keep it going for 17 years. So I'm doing something right, I guess. Yeah. What do you remember most about your first job? Oh my God, my first job was horrific. When I was just on the cusp of turning 16, I got a job at an old folks home that was right behind the church that I went to. In fact, I walked over after church because, dumb me, I was not quite 16. I didn't know you didn't apply for a job on a Sunday. I went over and got a job application. I applied. Honest to God, why they would hire a 16-year-old, I don't know. And again, I was not quite 16. I was, I think, a couple weeks away from turning 16. And they hired me to be a nurse's assistant back before you had to be a certified nurse's assistant. That was shortly into my short-lived career at that place. It was horrific. It was awful. It smelled bad. I came home every day smelling like an old folks' home. It was gross. I hated the way they treated the people there. I hated the fact that most families dumped their family members off there and never came to see them. I kind of hated everything about that job. There were a few laughs here and there, but for the most part, it was depressing. And that's what I remember most about that job. How old were you when you started working well? When I started working, well, I always say my first job where I got a W-2 form was that job, working the old folks home when I was 16. But I started working picking berries when I was much younger. And I'm not even sure how old. 10? Maybe? And every summer would have to go out and pick berries. You go out before the sun's even up. By the time you get to the berry field, the sun has just come up. And it's just starting to get warm. And I hated it. And I'm not sure whoever thought it was a good idea to put a fat kid in a field full of food that you can free range on, because I ate more than I put into the little little flat of berries and never made really any money. And so the next question is, what is the worst job you ever had? And I'm going to have to say it was that one. I mean, I'm not sure if that actually qualifies as a job. I didn't get a paycheck. I got paid by the work. So you would get paid by the pound. And honestly, they probably should have weighed me going in and out of the field and been like, well, you now owe us $5, whatever it was. But between that and the old folks home, worst jobs. I had a job for a day as a telemarketer. I hated that, but it was a day, so that doesn't really count. So I'm going to go with the old folks home and the berry patch. What originally got you interested in your current field of work? I don't know. As a little kid, I always said I wanted to be a hairdresser. I think that it was just, I loved beauty and glamour and old movies and all of that. Even as a little kid, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. Have you ever had a side hustle or considered having one? That would make me sound very hip and cool. I worked, when I first met my husband now, my good husband, I had 3 jobs. I worked at the hair salon. I worked at the bar doing shows, hosting my own show. And I worked at a jewelry counter in Meyer and Frank, which is now Macy's. And that was the first one to go, because once I married him, I was like, I don't need to have 3 jobs. And so I then only had the salon and the nightclub. And then after we were together for about 3 years, I retired from that because I'd been doing it for 20 years. And I was like, yeah, it's time. What's the worst career decision you've ever made? Oh boy. I don't know. That's a good question. If I had to think about that, the worst career decision I ever made, I never made any. I only make good decisions. I don't think I've ever made any that really impacted me or my work or my life to such a degree that I even still think about it. So, do you consider yourself good at networking? Absolutely not. I'm not. I'm not good at anything that really you're supposed to be doing to build your business. I'm also at the point where I'm kind of winding down and work is like, meh. What career advice would you give to your younger self? Get into a whole different line of work where you get paid better, where you have vacation time, where you have holidays off, where you have sick time, where you have paid benefits of medical stuff, because I have none of that stuff. Now, the upside is I don't have a boss either. And if I don't want to go to work, I don't go. If I'm not booked, I don't go to work. But then I also am not making any money, because if I don't work, I don't get paid. Pure and simple. Do you believe in having a 5-year plan? No. No, I don't. When will you know you've made it? Oh, dear God, I'm going to be 61 in just a few short days here. So, guess I've made it as much as I'm going to make it. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that I succeeded in my career as an entertainer, and I've done as much as I care to do in my career as a hairdresser. So more than anything right now, I'm more interested in being a good parent, because that's the lasting legacy, isn't it? Are you looking forward to retiring, or do you plan to work as long as possible? Oh no, girl. I am looking forward to retiring. I would love to not have to work. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I'll be so bored. What will I do? I have lots of things to do. And I have been, honestly, to tell you the truth, I have thought about retiring before I even started working. I was like, how many years do I have to work before I can retire? Because I'm a lazy bitch. I just want to be home in my house, do my things, and not have to be out in the public. Have you ever had imposter syndrome all of the time? I really believe that probably goes back to what we talked about earlier with, did I think my show would sell out or whatever. I always think, well, no one's going to want to come see me. Or I have days at work doing hair where I think, I have no idea what I'm doing. Because I'll get frustrated with one little thing. And I'll think, why do I do this? Why does anybody come to me? I'm not any good. And that, of course, is ridiculous, but I think it's very common. I think most of us suffer from that at one point or another. Now I'm just going to skip some stuff. Are you into after-work happy hours? Nope. Don't drink. And I don't want to go out after work. I want to come home. How do you motivate yourself in your career? Too late. When you started your current job, what most surprised you? Well, I've been doing hair since 1989. And I think what surprised me is that people will complain more about a cheap haircut than they will about an expensive haircut. And they will hold you to task with your $10 haircut way more than they will if they paid like $100 for a haircut at some fancy salon. They will not ask them to fix it. They'll come to me at my, because when I was younger, I worked, like right out the gate, I worked at one of those $10 haircut places. And they would come to me and be like, that $100 haircut place fucked up my hair. Well, why didn't you have them fix it? Well, I was intimidated. What? And so that surprised me. But, I was just like, that is silly. You paid all that money, and I'm sure you also, on top of that, tipped. So, yeah, I don't understand that at all. Okay, off the career stuff. Who do you most like spending time with and why? Well, said it before and I'll say it again, my family. My husband, my children, and yeah. When I get the chance, I love to see my cousin and her family, and I love to see my sister and her family, because they're all cool, chill people that are fun to hang out with and don't give me any grief and don't make me feel less than because I'm not what their expectation of people is. They're all the kind of people that just make you feel like whoever you are is right. And I love that. Which family member makes the best food? Well, that's a good question. Not me, which I discussed earlier. I just kind of do my thing and I cook whatever is kind of easiest. Back when I was young, it was my mother. She was a really good cook, but she doesn't cook anymore. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one because, oh, you know what? I do know. I'm going to say my cousin Amy's husband, because he does this, he has a smoker and he does amazing things with meat. And that may sound silly, but oh my God, he does this candied bacon that is like crack. Because once you start eating it, you don't want to stop. And you know for a fact is that you're going to feel terrible because of all the salt and sugar and, well, pork. But, oh, it's so good. How has your opinion of your family changed over the years? Well, when I was a kid, I of course was taught you have to love your family because they're your family. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized I don't have to love my family. I don't have to love, people will say, well, you don't have to like them, but you have to love them. Well, that's nonsense. I don't love anybody that I don't like. And I learned that when my siblings are assholes, I don't have to like them. I don't have to have any kind of feelings about them. I can create a family. And that changed dramatically. So I'm only going to do one more question, and then I'm going to wrap it up. And I hope this has been interesting. And if it hasn't been, sorry. But I'm doing the best I can with no co-host this week. My last question is, do you ever wish you were raised differently? I talk all the time about how I was raised single mother, family, 6 children, very poor. And going through it, I often wished it was different. And I know a lot of people say I didn't know any different because it was all I knew, but I knew different. Even from watching movies or seeing other people who didn't live that way. But do I wish I was raised differently? I did then, and now I really don't, because I'm not scared of being poor. I'm not scared of being without funds. I know how to survive. I, if nothing else, became a survivor. And so I know how to do stuff. I know how to take care of myself. I know how to take care of my family. I know how to stretch a dollar. I know how to make, food on the most limited amount of money. I can do all of those things because of how I was raised. And because of that, I can also pass some of that on to my children. Hopefully they won't ever be in that situation, but they probably will. The way the world's going now, who knows? Who knows if they'll ever even be able to go out on their own. But I don't wish I was raised differently. If I could have traded out some of my siblings, maybe. But on that note, I'm going to wrap things up and tell you that next week Annika will be back, and next week we'll be doing our normal thing. And if you have any comments, questions, queries, or anything else that you want to send to us at itwouldseemasthough@gmail.com. And I really appreciate you spending this hour with me if you made it through to the end. And we will talk to you next week.
It would seem as though.